to move on to another issue that you've been very outspoken about, really fascinating, the role of gender in mass shootings and homicides just in general. According to 2011 Bureau of Justice statistics, young men between the ages of 14 and 24 represent only 7% of the population, yet commit 45% of homicides. What do you think is behind this insane disparity?
Well, I mean, men commit over 90% of violent crime of all kinds, and as well in school shootings and rampage killings, men comprise 98 to 99% of those killers. And yet in the mainstream conversation about school shootings and rampage killings, which seem to happen with alarming frequency in this country, there's very little discussion about gender as one of the categories. The main category that people talk about is mental illness and the availability of guns. And yet the obvious rejoinder, the obvious response to that, which doesn't seem to be that obvious because you don't hear it, is, well, there's an awful lot of women and girls who are mentally ill. There's an awful lot of girls and women who have access to guns. Why is 98 or 99% of the shootings done by men and young men and boys? Because obviously the answer is it's not about mental illness or guns. It's about a combination of cultural narratives about manhood and ideologies about manhood and the availability of guns, and in some cases mental illness. And I think when I say cultural narratives, one of the most powerful ways of thinking about violence, especially when it comes to school shootings and rampage killings, is it's generally revenge killings by boys and men who have been bullied, or on the other hand, boys and men who have experienced great loss and rejection. Whether it's being laid off from jobs, being broken up by their wives or their girlfriends, facing rejection and other forms of disappointment and grief, and then using violence to gain back something that they think has been taken from them. Girls and women don't have that same cultural narrative, by the way, which is reinforced in Hollywood movies and music and television. And there's so many different scripts in our culture that play over and over. Video games.
Right.
That if you're a man and something's been taken from you, the way to take it back is through violence, which is what we see in so many of these shootings.
And of course, institutionalized, of course, throughout the military as well. But to wrap it up, we have about a minute left, but I think a lot of skeptics, including women, will say that you can call anything a gender issue or a race issue. How do you respond to the criticism that these concepts are too abstract and don't provide a solution to the problem?
Well, of course, I would disagree. I think the solution lies straight squarely in the face of this issue. I mean, when it comes to violence, the central, most important issue to look at is gender, in my opinion. Of course, we have to look at poverty and racism and militarism and inequalities of all kinds, of course. But again, the numbers don't lie, Abby. I mean, the vast majority of violence is perpetrated by men and boys, even in situations where girls and women are living in the same conditions of poverty, inequality, and racism. So obviously, gender is an incredibly important and central category to examine. It's not, by the way, anti-male to say this. It's not against men. It's just trying to be honest and introspective and self-aware as individuals and on a societal level to look take a more broad perspective and understand what's going on, and then what can we do differently? How can we define manhood differently?
Really important insight. Thank you so much for coming on, breaking it down. Dr. Jackson Katz, author of Leading Men.
Thank you very much, Abby.